Dirty Scrap Podcast.
Chuck, thank you for being here with us. I think last episode was incredible. The people was talking about it. A lot of people reached out to me, talking about what we were discussing, and I know to talk about tariff and everything that is happening right now is it's back and forth because everything in every day everything is changing. Let's I was curious about let's I was thinking about, okay, shock is every day seeing how everything is moving in different directions. How is your, because I think the first episode we talk about your career and how you get involved into the aluminum association, but how is the daily basis from your side? Because for me, I can see the tariff moving forward. I saw what happened yesterday with Canada, that they just rise up to 35%. And I think the section 232 is 50% still. But we're gonna dig into that later, but this is my perspective that I am, just a guy that is working in this industry. But from your point of view, that you are every day getting involved in this, in the high level, how are you seeing everything moving?
Mhm. Julio, that's a great question. And the first thing that I would say is that from where I sit in Washington as a career trade association executive, one of the things I struggle with the most is how you're doing from day to day,
Right.
because I am not in touch with enough the people who are making the metal day after day and seeing these changes as they are implemented on the ground. And so I personally, but also everybody on the association team, we spend a lot of time trying to get out in the field and to make sure that we're not out of touch with the industry. And it's a continual struggle. I've been at this for 30 years, and I still try to make sure that I'm calibrated properly and listening to the industry. But
Right.
you asked a question about how things are in Washington for the industry. And so, the Aluminum Association is engaged in promoting aluminum as the sustainable material of choice. And we carry out certain bedrock functions because we have found that that's what the industry needs in order to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. And so, from your side, what this would look like is the business statistics that describe our industry. When you look at shipments data and you look at how the individual markets are doing, that
Right.
data comes from. So, that's the kind of work we do. And when it comes to metallurgical standards, when you're talking about the common language that we use to describe our metal at the alloy level and at the application level, that's the work we do. And so, what I can tell you is that since January, the discussion around trade it has eclipsed a lot of our other work. Now, that doesn't mean that work is not still vitally important, and we will still
Right.
continue to measure carbon intensity, for instance, and we'll continue to do all that work because over the long term, that's what it takes to be successful. But right now, at this particular moment, trade policy is what it's going to take to keep our industry successful in the United States and in North America. And so that's where we focus a lot of our time. And so the first thing I can say about the way my life has changed since January is that I and many people on the Aluminum Association team are spending most of our time working on these trade policies as they
Mm-hmm.
cycle. And then, Julio, I would go one step further. You were saying, it's from where the industry sits, it's sort of hard to figure out everything that is going on and to sort of decipher the different tariff refs and so forth. So, if you, I'd like let me just start there
Sure.
because that is one of our jobs. So we're pushing out information on a weekly basis to the membership and to the industry, trying to help the industry keep keep good footing in the current environment because it's a lot. So the Trump administration has passed or enacted several different rafts of tariffs,
Mm-hmm.
and they have differing levels of importance for our industry. I would say all of them are important because tariffs as a whole have to be taken as a holistic package.
Right.
And so you can't pull on one string over here and not have it unravel something over way very far away. But in general, we're looking at some of these really large tariff rafts, like the reciprocal tariffs. Those are the tariffs that are being negotiated on now. The fentanyl tariffs, which are the tariffs that were enacted against China, Mexico, and Canada very early in Trump's presidency. Those are still very important. We have the traditional 301 tariffs that have been enacted for several presidential administrations now, and then the 232s that were enacted on steel and aluminum, but now on automotive and on just this week, copper. Those are specific to individual sectors. And so, as an industry, we have had to decide where does our time need to be spent? Where can we be effective, and where are we being affected as an
Right.
industry? And what our board and what our members have decided is that where our association should focus our time is in just a few places. I think it goes without saying that we must focus on the 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum because
Mhm.
those are tariffs specifically enacted for our industry. They affect our industry directly, and they have the most fundamental impact on the trade of our metal. And so we focus there. We also focus on the North American Free Trade Agreement, USMCA, and on the relationship with Canada and Mexico because we are geographically contiguous with those two countries. There's an
Right.
enormous amount of trade. They are our largest trading partners for aluminum and for trade in general. They are vitally important for us, both in terms of fabrication and as a source of both scrap and primary aluminum. So, of course, we focus on USMCA. And then finally, we still focus on the tariffs that will get at the fundamental issue that we still define as the fundamental disruptor of the
Hmm.
aluminum industry, and that's China. And so the 301 tariffs are a tariff that is specifically focused on
Hmm.
China. It is honestly, it's the best fundamental trade instrument. The 301 tariff rule, the language, the statute, it was designed to reach into trading partner countries to say this domestic policy that you have is fundamentally affecting your trade with us in an unfair way, and you need to
Right.
change that. And it's the only tariff statute that is meant to do that. And coincidentally, it is those domestic policies in China, state subsidization, uh, banking, and capital rules and statutes in China. Those are the things that we have identified as being fundamentally unfair and in need of change for our industry.
Right.
So, to recap that one more time, we're really focusing on 232s, on 301s, and on North America. Now, that leaves a lot out. And so, as you look out into the world this week and last week, and you see these trade deals that the administration is reaching with these countries, those are trade deals for on the reciprocal tariffs.
Right.
And so far, those trade deals have not touched the 232 tariffs. And we have actually said that's a good thing. We have asked that the 232 tariffs and the diplomacy around them be kept on a separate track. Now, that does not mean that we agree with all of the levels of those tariffs or the breadth of their application today, but it means that we don't want them bunged together with other stuff where we're not able to go in and talk about what we need as an industry. So
Right.
overall, we see this movement on the reciprocal tariffs as healthy in that it hasn't swept us up inappropriately, and but it's not our focus as an industry. Okay, so now I just threw a lot out on the table. I was trying to sort of make sense of the whole world of tariffs, at least to the very
Perfect.
top. I hope that was a good start.
Oh, it's a perfect place to start. Now, saying that, let's elaborate a little bit more on the 301 on China, because I think China, I will not say is our biggest enemy on the side of the industry. I think is something that we can deal with and we can partner up in so many different levels. Of course, we need it. I mean, right? But how is this section, the 301, impacting the industry and what we can expect from it?
Mhm. A very good question. The 301s place a tariff on a broad swath, almost a complete swath of Chinese goods being traded into the United States, including aluminum.
Right.
And those tariffs are meant to impact Chinese policy domestically.
Hmm.
Now, in the aluminum industry, this has been our major complaint and the major factor that we have asked the US government to address for us. What we have seen, for instance, last year, out of all of the government support provided for the aluminum industry around the entire world,
Hmm.
85% of it was provided from the Chinese government to three firms in China.
Hmm.
And so you can say what you will about governments helping their manufacturing base. That scale is unsupportable. That
No.
scale the it distorts all Chinese aluminum products as they enter the global market unfairly. Now, uh, the position of our industry for many years has been that of course China should produce aluminum. So, first and foremost, they should service their domestic market, and they do. And China is the number one consumer of aluminum in the world
Right.
today, serviced almost universally by Chinese producers. And no one has had a problem with that. And what we have tried to say is that there is a fair way for China to engage in global aluminum trade. But currently, what we're seeing is not it. And I can provide you with a good bit more detail if you'd like to see that or talk about it. But it boils down to access to capital and state subsidization are at levels that the rest of the world does not provide for their domestic industries and cannot compete with.
Right.
And as long as that is true, we will ask for 301 tariffs to remain in place, at least for our industry. Now, there are fundamental complaints in the global trading system regarding Chinese state support for its manufacturing base. We believe that the 301s are an appropriate way to address that.
Is the 301 involving every kind of aluminum or just semi-finished and finished products? Because Canada, with the section 232,
232s.
232, sorry, is involving just semi-finished product and finished products, but not related to aluminum scrap, as far as I understand, right? And in China, it's pretty similar, or is different? Is involving every kind of aluminum, including raw material?
So China is subject to both the 232 tariffs and the 301 tariffs. And so at the 232 tariff level, China is subject to the 232 tariff level, which is 50%.
Right.
At the 301 level, that rate has varied and has been reset by the president very recently. I believe it's currently at 30. So there's a different scope to the 301s. They apply to virtually all trade with China, whereas you're absolutely correct. The 232 tariff regime is a much more classic version of a tariff regime. It's for listed products. So there's a list of 232 products that the 232 tariff applies to. And it has been expanded recently because we argued successfully to include some derivative products, aluminum intensive derivative products, in that list. And even there, the tariff is very specifically applied. The 76th chapter of the HTS code is for aluminum products. And for 232 listed products from the 76th chapter, the 232 tariff applies. It's called ad valorem. It means to the total value of the product. But there are derivative products now listed in 232 from outside the 76th chapter. And for those products, the 232 tariff applies only to the value of the aluminum in the product. And for the rest of the value of the product, other tariffs, whether they are reciprocal tariffs or 301s or others, then apply. It gets very complicated very quickly. The Aluminum Association has provided webinars and written clarification. As a matter of fact, we have a web page, which I'm going to ask Nadia to supply for us because I'm going to get it wrong, but it's www.aluminum.org/ I believe not trade. We'll get that for you in a moment, Julio.
Sure.
But we have an explainer page for our members where they can go and they can see all of these tariff regimes explained in detail so that they can understand exactly how they apply to them.
Right. What we are looking for with those tariffs into the industry itself here? Because at the end of the day, what I am, let's say, seeing is, okay, what we want to do is to increase the industry in the US. We want to, ramp up the industry back again, but it's not easy. And also how we can, I remember that the Aluminum Association released a paper or something similar talking about powering up American aluminum, right? And you gave some insight and strategy paths that we can do or perform in order to grow the industry, right? How is this approach and how these tariffs are impacting in the positive way the industry?
That is a great question. And actually, now we're really getting to the heart of the matter. So let's talk about the 232 tariffs. The 232 tariffs are, as you rightly said, they are explicitly meant by the administration to spur investment in the aluminum industry with a particular focus on the upstream. Although I believe the administration has argued, and we have argued, that the 232 tariffs should support the industry as a whole up and down the supply chain.
Right.
So if that's the purpose, are they going to get us there? Well, in our Power Up Aluminum paper, we've been really clear that no level of tariff is going to result in a new smelter by itself. It's going to take energy policy. And I know, Julio, you and I have talked about that before. And our association's position has had to evolve as the 232 tariffs regime itself evolves. And so now for a month now, we've been at a 50% tariff level on the 232s. The last time you and I talked, they were at 25%. So let me just quickly explain where the industry is. And when I say the industry, today I speak for north of 70% of aluminum manufacturing in the United States. There are other voices in this space. There's a there's a small, ostensibly trade association called the American Primary Aluminum Association, and that group represents less than 1% of U.S. aluminum manufacturing. And I need to make clear that I speak for the industry when I voice this position. The industry believes that a 50% tariff is too high for our industry. And I can get into great detail as to why we think 50%, a universal 50%,
Right.
is too much. A 50% tariff up and down the supply chain has several different impacts. First of all, our industry needs metal. We do not have enough smelters in the United States. And if we start building one tomorrow, it's going to be 6 to 8 years before it's finished. And one's not going to be enough. And so for many reasons, we are going to continue to be a metal taking country. And that's different from steel. Steel can satisfy their demand up and down the supply chain domestically. And so, just at the beginning of the conversation, the way a 50% tariff prices into our industry is starving us for feedstock material. And you can see that in the Midwest premium today.
Mm-hmm.
It has other impacts. We believe at 50%, again, because of the way our metal is priced and because of the way it's used in the marketplace, we do believe that 50% could lead to demand destruction. And as much as we don't really want to have those conversations today as a country, we do believe that may be where we're headed at a 50% tariff. Now, that does not mean that the industry does not support the 232 tariffs. We absolutely do. And we believe that there are solutions that will work for us. Targeted tariffs that address Chinese and more recently Russian metal on the world stage that incentivize the production and use of downstream derivative products in the United States. Those are the tariffs that will work for us, and many of them are in the 232 tariffs. So at the end of the day, we're supportive of this work by the president, but we do believe that there are some alterations that do need to be made.
Right.
We need to protect our metal supply. We need to protect American investment, and we need to make sure that tariff policy doesn't inadvertently impact the $11 billion in investment that we currently have underway as an industry. And when it does, we need to alter course.
Right.
And we do need to continue to exclude Chinese and Russian metal, most specifically in downstream semi-fabricated and derivative products from the U.S. market.
Right.
So you asked, it's a long answer. I'm happy to dive into any of those individual pieces in more detail.
Oh yeah, please. And actually, I love the answer. I think yes, we want to dig in a little bit more because at the end of the day, the idea is to understand very well what's going on. Because I want to understand very well, for example, with Canada, we've been allies forever, right? And we've been working together in so many different approaches, but aluminum approach is something that is very strong between Canada and US. And when we met in Chicago, I was talking with some guys that I know from some companies in Canada. They are aluminum billets manufacturers, but because of the tariff and everything that is going on right now, mostly on the Section 232, they are not manufacturing billets. They are selling the scrap directly into the US. That I think at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to capture more scrap in order to have more aluminum. But I don't see, or I don't know if we have the infrastructure to move in that direction. So it's two different things. What is going on between Canada and the US, and how do you see this in the near future, and how we can increase our capabilities when we have all the uncertainty right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we hear from the federal government and from our allies in Canada is that currently formal trade talks are paused, and I'm sure that they will resume in very short order, either bilaterally or within the auspices of the USMCA discussions. I think when we talk about the U.S. relationship with Canada, the most important thing we can do is look at it historically. We have been longtime allies with Canada. American companies have invested in Canadian aluminum production, and up until the beginning of this year, we were importing 75% of our primary aluminum imports from Canada, and our scrap imports from Canada were second only to our imports from Mexico. So we're getting a lot of metal from north of the border, and it's been a good deal for us. Now, with talks ongoing with the federal government, I don't want to be in a position of dictating to the federal government about what we should or shouldn't do specifically with Canada. But what I can say is we just have to look at this holistically. We will not produce this metal in the United States in short order. It will be many years before we do, if we do it then. In the meantime, we will continue to import. So what are our options? Well, we can import from Canada, where we've had this long-standing relationship, or we can get that 75% of our primary metal imports from somewhere else.
Hmm.
Now, what are our options there? Well, there's some capacity in Brazil and Australia, not enough to meet our full demand.
Right.
Then we can look at obviously the Middle East or India, and then after that, what's left? Well, there's China or there's Russia.
Right.
So we have to make some very hard decisions, or we have to stop producing. And that admitting defeat and not producing in the United States is not an option. So we will import this metal from somewhere. We have to decide from where.
Right.
And that's really where I would leave it today. I mean, I think there's much more to talk about with Canada in terms of what's happening today on the ground. There's also those scrap imports. Right now, with the state of American tariffs, the U.S. has buying power on the world stage to import scrap. In other words, with where the Midwest premium is today and where the scrap spread is, we can afford to buy the scrap we want internationally. But we are hearing now, with where the U.S. is, that there are economies that are looking at retaining their scrap. We have petitioned the government to retain our UBCs
Right.
in the United States. And so I don't want to count too much into the future on the buying power of the U.S. to satisfy our scrap demand if other economies that we traditionally import from are looking at scrap export restrictions. So we
Right.
have to be very careful in this space. At least in the North American context, I'm a strong proponent of the free movement of scrap across border. Quite frankly, Canada doesn't have the capacity to remelt all of their scrap, and it needs
No.
to come. The movement of scrap across the Mexican border has traditionally represented an efficiency in our industry where the scrap moves to where it can be processed the most efficiently. I would hate to see us lose that advantage, but the world is changing and we will have to change with it as an industry.
Do you think it's possible to lose that?
I do not right now. I think that we can maintain those scrap flows, and we will advocate strongly to do so.
Right. Because
But is
how
it possible
easy?
to lose other scrap flows from around the world? Yes, either from market advantage of other competitive interests, or possibly using non-market behavior, or through scrap flow interventions like those proposed in the EU and elsewhere.
Right. How easy is to deal with Brazil or the Middle East? At the end of the day, those are the options that we have if we want to move in that direction. But I don't know how easy it is to deal with that.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a logistics question. It will simply cost more to bring metal from halfway around the world
Right.
or from the southern hemisphere, and that's just a fact. So you have logistics costs, which would then be reflected in the Midwest premium at a
Hmm.
higher level than we had traditionally seen P1020 listed, probably. And by the way, I don't want to make forward-looking comments. I would just state that based
Right.
on
Right.
historical observation of how logistics costs get priced into our metal trading. So first, it's just a logistics question, and the fact that we're giving up our geographic advantage from being so close to Canadian smelting. Then beyond that, you have some security concerns. There are countries and regions that are within the U.S.'s traditional defense industrial base, and there are
Hmm.
places that are not. There are quality concerns. Although I'm not here to say that P1020 produced in other parts of the world is low quality. I'm simply stating that companies in North America have had long-standing customer relationships with certain vendors. And as anyone well knows, when you have a complaint, calling an established vendor that you've had a multi-year relationship with is very different from buying metal off of the London Metal Exchange.
Right. Right.
So all of those factor into the attractiveness of producing semi-finished goods in the United States. And all of those will be a factor into the future. We firmly believe that there is a solution to all of this. The U.S. economy will find its metal. The question will become at what price.
Right.
We're living in interesting times. There's going to be a lot of upheaval here before we get to an end state.
Right. And saying that, what do you think it is better in order to improve what we have right now as an infrastructure? Is better to have a better deal with Canada and keep having all these primary metal from them, or at the same time, because I know we have like 3 or 4 smelters that they are working, still working in the U.S., right? Because we lose like 90%, if I am not wrong, of the smelting capability here in the U.S. for the last 30 years. And as far as I know, those smelters are working even below 55% of the capacity that they can work, right? So why is that? Why we are not working 100% on that side that actually we can support and supply more primary aluminum locally? And if we start working 100% on those smelters, it is possible for us to buy some time in order to create more and more of these smelters?
Mhm. Well, I'll tell you a secret. Those smelters not running at full capacity and the loss of smelters in the United States was not because of tariff policy. It was mostly because of energy policy. And so the privatization of the American energy grid is over the course of the last century is what has led us to the place we are today, where energy prices are where they are. This can absolutely be reversed. And I don't mean by nationalizing the energy grid. I believe that there
Right.
are concrete policies which we outline in detail that can lead to the provision of energy at the level and with the transparency and long-term commitment needed for a smelter to thrive in North America. And we're huge proponents of that. Nobody wants to see that more than I do. We are huge proponents of Century Aluminum's bid to open a smelter, and we are watching closely to see how EGA does with their project in Oklahoma. We definitely want
Right.
to see these smelters come to fruition. Nothing would be better for the aluminum industry in North America. But with that said, it'll take time to get there. And so, if you're asking, is it better for us to just get our metal from one place, or is it better to build the smelters? I think an all of the above approach is reasonable. Let's do everything we can to open smelter capacity. I think there are real headwinds to bringing on some pretty old, bringing some old capacity back online. But I'm not
Mhm.
saying no to that either.
Right.
Structurally, if every smelter in the United States that has any curtailments was running at full capacity today, that would still only service about one third of our primary metal demand. So
Mhm.
we're not going to get there by turning things back on. We're going to have to build new, and we're going to have to do that with energy policy. And we definitely want to see that happen. But but in the meantime, when you ask about other sources of aluminum, whether it's Canada or others, yeah, we'll have to get it from somewhere. We
Definitely.
can't just not roll product for 6 years until a smelter starts
Right.
making.
Right. And definitely, I think what we are searching here into the U.S. aluminum industry is, we don't want to keep this dependency on third parties. We want to have more local aluminum, of course.
And Julio, I should have said we should also look, obviously, at the other place where we get our feedstock metal, and that's scrap. And so I haven't mentioned that enough on today's podcast. So let me dive in there just a little bit.
Sure.
When the administration started talking to us in January and February about new smelters in the United States, we were enthusiastic about discussing that with them. Absolutely. And we gave them a roadmap for what we really think is needed in order to get us there. And yeah, energy policy is what we need to get us there. But then we also said, the other place where we get the metal, really even more of it, is from scrap.
Right.
And there's a lot more we could be doing in that space. And that could happen on so many different levels. And I know I've spoken to you about this previously, but we need to look at that entire ecosystem from recovery, where U.S. policy is just fundamentally broken, like the ability to recover scrap from end consumers. We know that our metal will be remelted if we recover it. Period. Full stop. We know it because we do it in our other two major markets. We're bringing back we're recovering more than 90% from building and construction and automotive. So why are we only recovering less than half from consumers? Well, because we dissipate the value of the metal across the economy. You can't motivate American consumers to recycle with the value of the can alone. You have to have other policies in place. You have to make it easy to do. Right now,
Wow.
it's incredibly hard to recover aluminum from end consumers. One collection point in a county is not recycling.
Right.
It will spur recycling, and you can't get recycling that way. You'll get some well-meaning effort from a fraction of the population, but you won't get the metal back. So we have to have better recycling policy, and we believe that it's deposit legislation. We believe that deposits incentivize the behavior that you want. They're not a penalty on anybody, and it's just good
Huh.
policy all around. And it works in the states where we do it. 10 states have it, and we get our metal back in those states.
Right.
Now, we can't stop with recovery. When recycled material gets to the MRF, we're losing some metal there. We need better segregation technology at the municipal recycling center facility level. And all of that is happening out in the world of consumer recycling. There's other things we can do. We can invest in better segregation technology in the aluminum industry. so that we are segregating alloy types and alloys go back into alloys. We can do a whole lot more to close our loop more tightly. I like to say it that way because we're already closed loop recycling aluminum back into usable metal with no loss of function. That's what
Right.
most industries consider closed loop recycling. We would like to consider closed loop recycling to be an aluminum wheel makes another aluminum wheel, an aluminum can makes another aluminum can. To us, that's the tightest closed loop. That's the best circularity you can have. And we don't have the technology fully for this yet. We can't segregate shredded automotive scrap at the level at the automated level that we would like to do so in the U.S.
Right.
And finally, Julio, that's why we've been careful with what we've asked for in the trade space on scrap, because we think there's very good reasons for Zorba to move internationally. When we're talking about shredded automotive scrap that we don't have the scale to recycle in the US today, we don't want to cause a problem by inadvertently intervening in the trade of a scrap that we can't process. On the other end of the spectrum, though, and this is a hard thing for us to talk about with our scrap suppliers, there are certain very high value scraps, segregated scraps, the first among them being UBCs, that we know we would melt every ounce of today in the US if we retain. And we have asked the federal government to look at banning the export of UBCs. And we might look at other mill ready or raw scrap grades as
Right.
well in the future, because we're just exporting US energy when we export those scraps. If it's a scrap we know we were going to remelt in the United States, then every pound of it could offset our need for primary aluminum.
Right, right. And now that you are talking about this, is very interesting. I don't want to use this platform as a commercial platform for what I am doing. Right, it's not the meaning of all of these episodes. But for me, we sell technology, and we sell the type of technology that you are talking about to help the industry to reach up to 98% melting efficiency. But it's very interesting for me that when I am talking with potential customers, they have no idea about this industry can have this opportunity to grab this technology and put it into the US and have more flexibility about what kind of scrap that you can melt in your facility. It's weird to me that they don't understand that for each type of scrap, you can have a different type of specific technology that will allow you to have the most efficient process out of the technology. So they are mixing everything in just one single equipment. So that's why I think the recycle capabilities are not growing, because we need the industry to understand that there are out there technology that will help them to make more money and to be more lucrative if they understand how to do it. And definitely, these will help the industry to release a little bit on, or not to rely too much on the P1020 and the primary aluminum, but go more for the aluminum scrap recycling processes and also increase the aluminum capability that we can have here. Now, saying that, what is happening with the aluminum demand in 2025? Because in 2024, we have a huge demand. I think grows by 4.2% of something like that. And right now it's just 2.5 or close to that number. Why?
I'm not ready yet to ascribe any single uh, factor to the soft demand numbers that we have seen. And you're absolutely right, Julio. We put out our mid-year demand numbers just last week, I believe, and
Mhm.
U.S. producer shipments were down, I believe, 7 points, and that's a lot.
It is.
And even if we were to, and I do worry that we are seeing some demand destruction because of complex behaviors around tariffs. Let me give you an example. We saw an incredible demand spike in February, right before tariffs were enacted,
Right.
and then we've seen a trough since then. So I'm not ready to say that this is a long-term trend. I think that we're in a moment of incredible disruption. Now, what I can say is that the disruption that we are seeing is due to tariff policy.
Mhm.
Now, and I think that the Trump administration would look at that and say, "Well, you're darn right. That's what we meant to do. We aren't doing this for nothing," and that's okay. Possibly, if the endpoints work and if the tariff policies are what will work for the industry. And honestly, you're looking at the right metric, because ultimately the proof will be in the pudding. We'll either see
Right.
good demand, and even if you look at tariff as a demand disruptor, which tariff, and not even which tariff affecting the aluminum industry. Maybe these are tariffs affecting our major market.
Right.
And so we just don't know enough yet. Now, we have spoken to the federal government about what we are seeing in our demand numbers because they need to know the truth
Hmm.
in real time so that they can
Right.
adjust as they choose to. The Aluminum Association has always taken the central position that we have to provide the U.S. government with the best and most timely information about what's happening in our industry on any topic. It does not matter what the topic is. If they can't get good information about the industry from the association, whether they like it or not, or whether we like it or not, then what are we doing?
Right.
So we do provide that information, and we are providing this information, but we are still looking at and trying to decipher what these numbers mean in real
Hmm.
time. But yes, it is a concern.
Right.
Now, in the long term, our read of the fundamental demand picture is that demand remains strong, and you will see that reflected in continued investment in our industry in the United States and in increased capacity.
Hmm.
We believe that the fundamentals driving the use of our metal in automotive, in packaging, and in building and construction, to say nothing of electrical and other markets, it remains strong. So I hope to be able to report in a few more quarters that what we're seeing is disruption and not long-term demand destruction.
Right. How much influence the Aluminum Association has on these, let's say, tariff decisions? I mean, do you have any
Oh,
kind of influence or zero?
never enough, Julio. That we can always have more influence. The
Right.
federal government listens to what the industry says. The federal government across multiple administrations has listened to and reacted to the concerns and the suggestions the industry has had around trade policy and any number of other policies. In
Right.
the last administration, we were successful in negotiating new tariffs with Mexico at the Mexican border
Hmm.
and in cooperation with the Mexican industry, as well as tariffs at the U.S. border. Just last fall, in partnership with the United States, Canada enacted through their electric vehicle rule comprehensive aluminum and steel tariffs at the border. And all of that happened because the U.S. government was listening to us and speaking on our behalf with those countries. Today, we have an administration that is ambitious and doing a lot and doing it in many different directions. And I would be lying if I didn't say that the attention to the 232 tariffs
Hmm.
has been, I think, secondary to the attention being paid right now to the reciprocal tariff packages. But they've set themselves a deadline on reciprocal tariffs, and they're trying to meet it, and they're announcing new trade deals every day. We fully expect, either in the USMCA context or as a separate line of diplomacy, that we'll see some movement on the 232 tariffs in the future.
Hmm. Interesting. So that's what we can expect for the future so far.
I think that if I had to give an overall prognosis, the Donald Trump's administration set out to reset global trade, and
Hmm.
that is an incredibly ambitious project. And they have been very candid that they would move fast and they would fix things as problems arise. Problems are still arising. We'll have to see where we go next. And I do think I have every expectation that this administration will listen to us and will adjust as needed in the future to because everybody has the same goal here. We all want
Definitely.
the U.S. aluminum industry to thrive and to grow as it has been doing for the last 10 years, partially due to trade policy enacted by Trump in his first term. That's the goal. And as long as we all keep a clear eye on what the goal is, I firmly believe we can get there.
Right. So to wrap up the episode, I want just to point it out something that I uh, um, saw in your powering up American aluminum, and I think this help us to summarize everything that we are talking right now here. And I will say the three different ways that we can help the industry with all the uncertainty we have, because at the end of the day, tariff are tariff, and we have, as you just said, just a little bit of influence on what we can do, but definitely getting to the new or restart primary smelters is one of the directions that we can have. Second one will be expand remelt capabilities, right? That is having better technologies and everything, and also improve scrap collection systems, right? I
Mhm.
will say that if we go in that direction, I mean, we will mostly be aware of every direction that we can have a better improvement on the aluminum side from the primary sector to the recycling sector and improve the recycling capabilities and also having more quality aluminum getting out of the furnace in order to have more aluminum and be
Mhm.
more lucrative, right? So are you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. We have to have metal supply, and that can come from primary. It can come from investing in secondary, but it can also come from recovery. And those are the places we're going to get our metal in the future. I would lay on top of that, we're going to have the right trade policy in the future to be successful as a nation.
Definitely.
I firmly believe that that is an achievable goal.
Right. Before we go, what is a good tariff approach? Just to be a little bit a tricky question here, just to wrap up the episode. I know it's not an easy question to answer, and I know it's not depending on you, but what do you mean about a good tariff?
I think that it means that 50% universally applied to our industry is too high, that a tariff policy has to acknowledge that we have to have metal inputs,
Right.
that we have to have a strong and united North American trading region, and that we have to continue to treat our valued trading partners like valued trading partners. That's what I would call a good tariff policy.
No, I appreciate it. I'm totally agree with you. And Chuck, thanks again for being here with us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And hopefully, we will have more of those episodes. We will talk more about it. And I am sure that we will have another episode once we understand what is going on in the future. Yeah. So please, let's keep in touch. And Nadia just sent the link about what you were talking about. So I will put it on the description of the episode so the people can just go there and check what's going on and understand a little bit better about what tariff is
That's great to hear.
getting about.
Leo, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I think that we should definitely get back together as soon as tariff policies change fundamentally. So I guess that will be about Wednesday of next week. So it's nice to talk to you, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Dirty Scrap Podcast.